All right, welcome to the Practical Prospecting Podcast. This is the podcast from salespeople for salespeople, where in 15 minutes we teach you practical prospecting tips. Today we're learning from Julia Carter over at Marpy. She did 400% to her ramp quota and then continued to crush quota every month after that and getting promoted to AE. But get this, she did it without cold calling. So Julia, I'm super excited to have you on and kind of learn a little bit more about how you're crushing quota without cold calling. So welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks, Jed. I'm very excited to be here.
For sure. Yeah. So let's just jump right into it. I think the biggest thing I wanted to know when I looked at your LinkedIn is how did you do 400% in your first month? And then, like I said, continue to hit quota all without cold calling. What were the things you were focusing on and kind of doing differently if it wasn't cold calling?
Yeah, for sure. So it's funny. So I joined Marpipe as like a senior SDR, which was kind of like a competitor company to my last job. So I was pretty familiar with like the space and all that. But I got there and they're like, okay, Julia, like here's your list of prospects from ZoomInfo. And you have to make $150 a day and, have fun. Here's your email cadence. And my jaw dropped. I was like, oh my God, like, I'm not doing that. I just told them point blank. I was like, you didn't hire me to use this very like salesy cadence and like with this like very like cookie cutter list. I was like, I cannot. So they basically were like, okay, like may the best man win. So I kind of did things like my way, quote unquote, where it's all about, I think, like having a really good list of prospects. So if you put in what you get out is what you put in. So if you're not putting in quality people, you're not going to either resonate or you're not going to get like quality meetings. So that was like step one, was like being super specific with like who I was reaching out to. And then the second was just having like a decent cadence, more so about the prospect and not really like my company does this. Yeah. Like we help you 4x your ROI. Like that just is so bad. And like no one cares about that. Like people don't care about your company. They care about how you can help them. So I just kind of like rewrote the whole thing and and it worked. So thank God.
Now no one's cold calling.
Yeah, no, literally.
So you said two things that I think are really important. I want to jump into the first one first, which is finding good people to add to your cadence. And when I was first an SDR, it was the same thing. I was actually more of a cold caller and emailed less. And I would just cold call everybody and have the same generic script, and it never worked. Yeah. I managed to hit quota some months because I just called the hell out of the phone. But what did you do to actually narrow down your ICP? Like, was there anything, like what sort of research did you do to figure out like, okay, who are the people I actually want to add to my cadences? And what are the problems they have? Because I think that's super important, right? If you're adding the right people to your cadences, you're always going to have higher conversion rates. So what did you do, like, especially as a brand new SDR at a relatively, newer company without a big sales org? How did you figure that out on your own?
Yeah. So I think it's honestly something that's so overlooked because people focus so much on like, what's the best cadence? What's the best order? But if you don't have good people going in there, like the cadence doesn't even matter. Right. So for me, like originally they were just kind of going after like marketers who do like paid media. And I was like, this is too broad because it's like, what does that mean? So I kind of tried to make it as specific as possible and just looked at like what our product helps with and really, really narrowed it down. So like, for example, I go after like performance marketers in paid social who work at e-commerce, like retailer brands who have over 1,000 SKUs, who run unbranded white background DPA, who hopefully have an in-house creative team. And like, that's like specific, whereas before it was like marketer. So I think being more specific definitely is better, but it does take some trial and error, I think, to figure it out. But if you're like prospecting into sales, like think like, okay, like sales, what? Like sales companies with a small SDR team, sales companies with, brands with little teams, big teams, like just really narrowing it down will like, also you can tailor your messaging so much more when you're prospect specific and you don't have to like do anything. Because when your prospect is specific, you can make specific messaging that will like hit home a bit better.
Yeah, it sounds like it's resonating with everyone. It's the same kind of exercise we're going through at Mailshake too, right? Because we can sell to pretty much anybody who's doing prospecting or outbound, but that doesn't mean we're a fit for everybody. And if we send emails or, cold call our entire addressable market, just saying like, hey, we work with sales teams, it sounds super generic.
Totally. Yeah. And I think too, like working at a broad, like something you can like, if your solution's broad, you either need to like just narrow it down to your best of best, or
Yeah.
you just need to make like buckets of like, okay, bucket 1, bucket 2, bucket 3, bucket 4. And then you can kind of like put people in there according to that. Because yeah, like you said, like I could go after any marketer,
Yeah.
but they're not going to know, like, not really resonate.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I think that leads into the second thing I wanted to ask you too was tell us what your cadence looks like. Are you using, I know the answer to this, but everybody else wants to know, are you using personalization? Are you just automating things? What does the cadence look like? It sounds like you have a really specific ICP. So how does that kind of break down into your actual cadence and email templates?
Yeah, my cadence is like absolute psychopath energy. It's like over 30 days. It's like 6 emails and it's all automated. I don't lift a finger. I just throw them in and let it run, which I don't know if I would necessarily recommend that to everyone. Like for a bit of context, we're a 2-person sales team with like no real like SDRs or anything like that. So like, and I'm also an AE. So there's just like any sort of time efficiency I can gain, like I'm going to take it. But yeah, the key is it sounds like personal or custom to them, but it's like not at all. Everyone gets the same exact message, which maybe is not the best way to go about it, but like it works for us. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep it. But yeah, it'll get like 3 meetings, like qualified meetings reliably a week usually. Which is pretty good if you actually add people to it. But in terms of what's in the email is, first of all, you start with like an observation of like, okay, like the problem they have. So for me, I know they're running unbranded white background ads. So I say, hey, I saw your white background ads, which is false because I didn't see them. I didn't get them. But like, I know they have them. So whatever, I know they have them because I checked. And then the goal, like, where do they want to go? So it's like, okay, have you ever tried branding them? Like, have you ever tried making them look better? It's like, all right. And then I go into like the method to get there, which is sneakily what I do. I'm like, have you ever tried doing this? But what this is what I do. And then I just leave it be. I'm like, let me know if that's interesting. Let it be. Use a lot of visuals too, which has been really helpful. I would if you have access to visuals, I would recommend, because a picture is worth 1,000 words and you don't want to use 1,000 words.
No, same here. We started using images as well, right? Like we've kind of pulled out like during our demo, what is the biggest aha moment almost, and then taking screenshots of that and using it in our emails.
So smart.
But I really like kind of like that framework that you broke down, observation. Have you considered this? And I also like, because you said in the beginning, you're not actually checking if they have white backgrounds. You can pretty much just assume that. I think people like a common way to use that same sort of framework is almost to assume they use a tech stack, right? So when I was at PandaDoc, where we were selling e-signature software, everybody uses DocuSign. It's pretty much just a given. Like they're the biggest competitor. So I would just assume, I'd say, hey, looks like you're using DocuSign. Have you considered this? Like the thing that we do differently from DocuSign. And the funny thing is, if they're not, they're going to respond anyways because everybody wants to correct you. So I love that strategy.
Yeah, it's good. And like, I mean, I think if you can just pin it down, you're reaching out for a reason. Like no matter what your tech is, like you're kind of assuming that they have an issue anyways. And like, if you can't prove it, you might as well just assume it, because it makes you seem just a bit more like knowledgeable and a bit more like custom to them. And like you said, like if you're incorrect, they will correct you. And maybe they're not using DocuSign. They're using like, I don't know, some other signature thing. So
there's like 20 of them.
Yeah, there's so many, but I think it's a good way to go about it. Because before, instead of me being like, oh, hey, Marpipe is a tool that helps you brand your catalog ads and can, increase conversion rates. Like that doesn't resonate as much as like, hey, I like noticed that you're running white background ads. Have you ever tried adding branding to them? Like, if not, like happy to help, and just leave it there. It's just like a better message for the prospect.
Yeah, I love that it's completely focused on them. Like you mentioned, you're not mentioning your company name at all. One thing I want to ask about too is, so the emails are automated. Where does LinkedIn come into this? How much, like as a full cycle rep, how much time do you set aside for LinkedIn prospecting? How does that work with the cadence? I know some people kind of just do it on the side. Sometimes it's like day 3, I send a LinkedIn message. What does your strategy kind of look like when it comes to LinkedIn? Since it's mainly email and obviously no cold calling.
Yeah. So I basically have a connection request, like step 2. Some people are like, you need a profile view and all this stuff. I've never looked at my profile views in my life. I don't know if anyone else has, but I don't really care who views my profile. I'm not like stalking, and most of these people aren't. Some people are, but I don't know. I feel like that's just like a waste of time. Like people think that whatever. But I do a connection request, and then like maybe once a week or twice a week, I'll just go through my connections and see like who accepted. And then from there, I'll send them a message. And my LinkedIn strategy is a bit more tailored than my email. It's a bit more custom. So I have like a template, but in my LinkedIn, I'll send them the photo of their white background ads. I'm like, hey, I saw you're running these ads. Insert ad I saw, like live ad. And then I'll provide like a suggestion to them. So it's a bit more tailored, but I found it works pretty well. And it's all in the follow-up, I think, with LinkedIn. Like I rarely get a response first message. It's going to be like the second or third that will like hit there.
Gotcha. So you're just sending like, you're basically providing that example, sending it on LinkedIn. Is it just like an open-ended question? Like what are your thoughts on this? Or are you kind of following up with a pitch? Like what does that kind of follow-up look like on the LinkedIn messages?
Yeah, exactly. So like my first message is like, hey, like I saw you're running like these ads, like literally send them the photo of the ads. I'm like, oh, have you ever tried adding branding to them? And then I add like a GIF of like what Marpipe does. Then the second message, I do like a little up arrow. I'm like only asking because like and then I'll send them like a bunch of examples. And I'm like, hey, like only asking because I think like if you added this, this, and this, like it could make them look a bit more on brand. What do you think of these below? And I'll send examples. Then in my third message, I'm like, what's your opinion on those designs? And I just kind of leave it there. And then usually people, if they respond, it's either a no or it's like, oh yeah, like that looks really cool. Like I'm interested.
Yeah, I like that. Cause then it's kind of like, I know it sounds cliche to say, right? But like you're actually providing value up front, right? Like you're showing them a snippet of what you guys can do for them, which I'm always a big fan of. We try to do that at Mailshake, but anytime you can use your product and kind of like use your product during prospecting to kind of give them a carrot almost to take the meeting, I think that's huge.
Totally. And it shouldn't be gate kept. I think so many companies like gatekeep their product and they gatekeep their pricing. And it's like really hard being a buyer right now. It's like a mess being a buyer. There's so many freaking solutions that all say they do the same thing. And all the messaging is so broad. And if you can just be a little bit more tailored and a little bit more specific, like people will, because they understand what you're reaching out about. If you're like, hey, like, do you have a problem with emailing? Like that is so broad. But if you kind of like give them a bit more of context as to why, like that usually tends to help.
Yeah, make the problem specific for sure. So two more questions. So first thing, it looks like you went from founding SDR to account executive full cycle in about 3 months. Can you kind of walk me through that process of like being an SDR at a relatively new sales org? How did you go from, like hitting quota right away, getting promoted? What was that process like? Like, what were the things you did? And kind of talk to me a little bit about that experience being a founding SDR. I was in a similar situation a few years ago. I know there's like tons of growth opportunities. So I'm just kind of curious to hear your perspective on it.
Totally. So for slight background, my first job for 5 months was like SDRE. It was like recruiting type of stuff. Then my second job out of college was like for a full year, I was like an SDR. Then I left for Marpipe where I was kind of this like, senior SDR. And I mean, up front, they told me, they're like, listen, if you are good, you will get promoted. So I was like, perfect. I need to be good so I can get promoted. But yeah, that was kind of the expectation up front on my end. But I think for me, things that I did to like help me get there was like, one, I came in and I just like did my job. I came in, I wrote all new cadences. I helped narrow down the ICP. I helped basically introduce the entire outbound process. Like we went from all inbound to now like all outbound basically. Yeah. So that's just, because inbound, like God knows what's coming in inbound, but we know what's coming in outbound because we found it.
Right.
But yeah, so I think it was just like coming in, taking ownership over that. And then like actually booking meetings, like you got to like do that too.
Got to hit quota. Where did you learn all this stuff too? Because a lot of like, if you didn't have somebody else at the company who was doing this, what was your resource for like figuring out, I need to really narrow my ICP. These are the things I need to do. What was that kind of like self-learning process like?
Yeah. So at my old company, I was so lucky. Like we had the most amazing training, like training for like 2 months of training. That's a long time for a company to train someone. So I was really lucky with that. And I also think I got to try like everything under the sun there, like videos, GIFs, personalized, like the classic personalized email, the automated email. Like they gave us all the cadences, but like, we could really do kind of whatever. So I think that was a great environment for me to learn in. But then I realized like we were sending all these personalized quote unquote emails every day, like 50 emails, with the classic stupid, like, I saw you went to Denison, like go Big Red, great school. And then we weren't booking anything. And it's like, well, no wonder, because so I was like, all right, we need to like shift and just kind of rewrote the cadences on my end. And now I'm like booking meetings with accounts I was chasing for like over a year there. And now they're like close one at Marpipe within like a month or two. And I'm like, perfect.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I know. It was very gratifying. I'm like, wow, these people that I've been trying to contact for so long, finally.
I think it's an underrated reason too for like in your sales career, staying relatively prospecting the same type of people to an extent.
Yes.
Because you kind of build, it kind of compounds, right? Like whatever company you go to, like over time, it'll start to compound your reach.
It does.
The same people. You just get better at it.
Totally. And it gets like, also like people will come back, someone I reached out to in like October, like you kind of know who they are. Like you can just put them back in and like now they're interested, a while ago, they're like, no, not for me, or didn't respond. And now it's like, oh yeah, good timing. So I think that was pretty key.
Awesome. Well, cool. Julia, I have one more question for you. If anybody follows you on LinkedIn, they know you're full of hot takes. So what is your,
oh no.
what is your hottest take that you want to leave the audience with that you firmly believe in?
Oh my God. I have so many hot takes, but I can only pick one. So I'm going to go with pitch slapping is not bad. Okay. It is not bad. And everyone's like, pitch slap, which is, first of all, the dumbest name ever. Whoever invented it, I'm like canceling them. They're going away in my mind. But honestly, like, I don't know, maybe sales to sales is kind of a different ball game, but like, I think it's completely fine to reach out to someone. You're doing it cold calling, cold emailing, you may as well cold message people. And if your message isn't terrible and actually has some context behind it, I think it's completely fine. And honestly, I booked a lot of meetings just with like, just calling it out first message, like, yo, you're doing this. Have you tried this? And just leaving it there. So a lot of people are like, oh, you need to build a relationship and like and comment on everything. But it's like not everyone prospects into salespeople. So like my digital marketers, they're not posting on LinkedIn all day. And also like, who am I to comment about Facebook advertising? I'm not a Facebook advertiser. What insight do I have? How am I going to like get in there? Like, like ASC campaigns are really killing it right now. Like I'm not that person. That's like fake of me. So I don't think it's a bad thing if you just keep it short and sweet and really just say why you're there.
No, I love that. It's like a breath of fresh air. I feel like there's a big energy going through a lot of sales content I see where people are kind of leaning more towards being a bit soft. And I feel like you have to, like, that's the whole name of the game in sales, right? You have to be able to get rejected. I don't know if people are afraid to like pitch slap and then get canceled for it or whatever. But like you said, if you know the problems and you've gotten really specific on your ICP, why not, right? Like if you actually think you can help them, just get to the point anyways. You're going to say it one time.
I 100% agree. It's really not that bad as long as you're thoughtful with like what you're going to say. And that message can be the same for everyone, but as long as it's thoughtful with like the type of person you're going after and what you're actually saying to them, I think it's completely fine.
For sure.
So we are bringing it back. Pitch slapping in 2023.
Yeah. Bring it back. That's my biggest takeaway for sure. But thanks for joining, Julia. I think we went a little bit over the 15 minutes, but it's good. We covered a lot of good stuff. Awesome. Anything you want to plug or point the audience to before we jump off?
No, nothing at all. Just, find me on LinkedIn if you want some saucy hot takes.
For sure. All right. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Bye.